It's a great honor to have you here, Chris. And Dave and I want to talk a little bit with you in the next half hour. And Dave, let's start it, huh?
All right. My name's Dave Haynes. I'm from Canada. I write a publication called 69. It's about digital signage. I've been doing that forever. Chris and I know each other real well.
I'm Florian. I'm doing Invidis, and I'm also doing a little. We do also specialize in digital signage, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Should we start? Mr. Riegel, how's the weather in Mordor?
It's not too bad. You Canadians keep exporting your smoke down to our beautiful country, but beyond that, I think we're doing okay.
You're welcome. So I think a lot of people would know you. Florian kind of gave you a bit of an introduction, but can you tell the massive crowd here what STRATACACHE is all about, how you operate, and how you got started? Because I was telling somebody last night about you, and I was actually saying nice things for a change, and saying how you've pretty much built this company on your own.
We, STRATACACHE, as a company, are now 1,100 people. We operate in 28 countries around the world. We manage and provide managed operations of 3.5 million screens around the world, roughly 1.2 billion in revenue for the year. And our claim to fame really is building and managing and operating our own technology platforms, from the CMS through the media player to the display, and running some of the biggest and most complex networks in the world.
Chris, many people know you because you took over STRATACACHE, Scala, at a time where Scala was in deep trouble. So that was, I think, 6 years ago or something like this. So could you just, shortly tell us a little bit, what Scala is today and what you changed? I think the business model and everything. So I think it would be quite interesting to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Scala, we purchased Scala in August of 2016 and really then turned the company around quite substantially. The sales now are roughly 3 times what Scala was when we purchased it, by really investing back into the business, providing more services, providing more solutions around Scala. It's very, very difficult today in the broader digital signage industry to make money just on software, because there are a lot of people that have self-defeating tendencies in pricing in the software. So you have to provide a full stack solution to be able to provide true solutions. Otherwise, you can just never get ahead of the idiots in this marketplace.
You mean a single-digit monthly fees?
There's probably 10 companies that we all know of that sell at €1 to €3 a month and try to make it up on volume and just continue to make the market non-sustainable in that pure software-only environment. And every time one leaves, 2 more come in. So it's an advanced, consistent issue.
Chris, I remember when you took over Scala, you always said, Scala or software was only 5% of the digital signage value chain, or even less. And your goal was to double that. And not only double that, but Scala is nowadays an end-to-end provider. So you also have Scala branded hardware, media player, screens, everything. So after 5-6 years now, did you think that was the right way to do that? And does it give you an advantage to offer everything with your own brand?
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at the way that certain areas of this ecosystem are building out, whether that be airport networks, whether that be retail media networks, whether that be other types of specialty networks, customers are looking for solutions, not just sell me X or Y or Z at the lowest cost and build it yourself. As digital signage has evolved, it's becoming much more complex, much more in depth, and there's opportunity to build and maintain networks that can be profitable, as opposed to just selling for €2 SaaS solutions.
Chris, I'm curious. I did a panel about an hour ago, 2 hours ago, about European companies.
Sorry, Dave, I'm not hearing you at all.
Is that better?
Yeah.
That's better.
I did a panel about 2 hours ago talking about European companies who are expanding.
Sorry, Dave, I lost you again. I got no audio.
How's this? Whoa. If you can't, you probably heard that without a microphone. I did a panel about European companies expanding to North America, and they felt that they had to do that as a business to really grow. Your company's obviously American, and you've been spending the last several years expanding into Asia into India, and you know, we trade emails quite a bit. You've been in Europe quite a bit. Is there opportunity still in the United States, or are you looking elsewhere because it's kind of capped out?
Oh no, the opportunity in the United States is massive. The U.S. economy, as it goes towards digital, continues to grow at a very rapid rate, and I would say during the pandemic everything kind of stopped. But now that we're post pandemic, digital helps reduce labor from the environment. So having digital experiences means fewer people, fewer hourly employees. So the trend towards more digitization in the United States continues to grow rapidly. Same thing with retail media networks. The biggest kind of misperception, I think, and I say this very openly and honestly, is many people don't perceive how big the United States and Canada are just physically. So I talk to companies all the time in Europe that say, oh, I'm going to enter the US. Cool. Well, I'm going to put one salesperson in New York. Well, great. That's exactly like 1% of the marketplace. To enter the US and Canada in a large way, you're talking a 30 to 50 million euro investment if you want to be serious in terms of the infrastructure, the support, those things are necessary. So while it's a big market, it also has big demands in terms of infrastructure to be able to serve it.
There's been, you mentioned retail networks. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of noise in the marketplace about retail media networks. But I always caution people that a lot of the dollars and activity that people are talking about has to do with online, with e-commerce, with mobile and all that. It's not in-store screens necessarily. But is there a real opportunity there? Because this kind of reminds me of 25 years ago with those networks that deployed like CRT TVs hanging in Walmarts and so on.
Yeah, so I think your point on retail media networks is exactly right, which is in that retail media network, a retail media network is three components: the online component, the mobile component, and the in-store. Online and mobile are today 95% of that revenue because you have companies like Amazon or any of the online companies. When you start to get to in-store, and if you look at Albert Heijn or Jumbo or Carrefour or Asda or Tesco or any of the big European retail companies, they are now replacing their first generation in-store retail media networks, which were display only devices, with kind of second generation retail media networks, which are display and data centric, sensor centric systems. So there's a huge opportunity in that retail media network, but it also is very capital intensive and not something for the faint hearted.
Do you think they do it primarily by themselves, or because I heard of some, who are talking with JCDecaux or so, or do they leave too much margin then, give to somebody else?
Yeah, I have like great respect for the JCDecaux and the Clear channels because they're extremely smart operators. But from the retailer perspective, if you're letting JCDecaux, you're letting the wolf into the sheep's pen because they're going to take the vast majority of that revenue and they're going to be very smart about doing that. The retailers are always about efficiency and they'll build greater and greater efficiency, capture more and more of that marketplace. The analogy I use is the retailers are like, there's a show in the US called Gold Rush, and Dave may have seen this, where you have these big gold mines. What you don't understand is that you have to move tremendous amounts of dirt to get a very small amount of gold. That's a retail media network. You have to invest into it, the machines, the equipment, all of the infrastructure to get a very small amount of gold. But the gold is there and it can be very profitable, but it's a tremendous amount of work.
And are we talking about standard hardware? Are we talking about large format screens, or are we talking more smaller screens closer to the shelf or so? What do you prefer?
Yeah, it's really everything. And we bought PRN, the kind of founders of the retail media network business, in 2015. And retail media networks have been around since 1987, 1988. So this stuff's been around close to 30 years. That can be everything. I can go into a Carrefour and you'll see that big spectacular LED when you come in, then you'll see departmental and you'll see shelf. This generation of retail media networks is much more shelf-based, much closer to the actual product, because that's a much more valuable position.
One of the interesting things you told me is, and you said it consistently, that retailers, generally speaking, are cheap. They have T-Rex arms, and they don't want to spend the money themselves. So I found it fascinating that one thing that you're doing is basically providing, you're doing retail media as a service. Can you explain that?
Correct. So if I'm a CFO at a retailer, pick any big retailer. That CFO is typically bonused and their performance is based on same store sales growth. So if I say you pick a large retail chain and I can build out a retail media network in-house for 500 million euro, or I can build 100 new stores with 500 million euro. Every single time that CFO is going to say, build 100 new stores. That gets you same store sales growth with those new stores. That 500 million euro use case, if we're investing that money, we'll come in as a partner, build that network, help that retailer monetize that network, and that retailer is getting the lion's share of that revenue back. And we're then paying for that network over the course of 1, 3, 5, 7 years. But retailers are very, very capital averse to anything that's not building a new store.
Talking about STRATACACHE and as you have PRN and ID-Click and some other networks. So what do you plan? What is your plan for next 2-3 years? How much of your total revenue of STRATACACHE will be retail media in a larger scale, larger extent, not very maybe limited to just food retail or groceries, but how much of that, what is your plan?
Yeah, so we're $1.1 billion, $1.2 billion this year. That will probably get to about $3 billion in the next 3 years, and over half of that will be retail media networks.
That's a lot.
It's a very fast-growing area.
Let's talk about the other half. Let's talk about micro LED. I remember a few years ago you told me, Florian, I purchased, an empty chip factory somewhere in Oregon. I said, oh God, what do you want to do with this? A few years later, I think it was pretty much a smart move, I assume. So where are you? And could you just elaborate a little bit what you've done, where you currently are, and when you plan to go into production?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're taking first tools this year. When you buy tools for a fab, the waiting list is anywhere from 2 to 4 years. So these tools are immensely expensive. I have 2 tools that we purchased that are $130 million a piece. So you get to some very, very expensive equipment. So we're taking first tool this year. That gets us into prototype stage, end of this year, early next year. The politics are very much aligning. And when I say that, I'm an economics nerd. I don't watch sports. I don't have a leisure life. I focus on economics and politics. And when you look at what's happening between the decoupling of the U.S. infrastructure system and the Chinese infrastructure systems, there is a reshoring of factories to the United States. That trend is also now starting in the UK. I think you'll see it in Germany and others, where China has gone from a polite competitor to a threat competitor. Now you're seeing infrastructure systems and supply chains that are pulling back into home countries because they're strategically important. In saying it the right way, you've seen that initially with chips in the United States and saying that we're not going to have all of our dependence on Taiwan. So you're seeing chip fabs being built. Around it to be able to consume that information.
Okay, I think most people don't really know what you plan to manufacture. Mainly micro LED, but not only for signage. You told me also for automotive and some other markets. Could you just expand it a little bit?
Yeah, so we'll make micro LED displays for commercial display use cases in the digital signage industry, for augmented vision in automobiles, in trucks, in commercial vehicles, for military use cases in cockpits, in tanks, in military type displays, but a broad range of specialty displays.
So the micro LEDs that are video walls that have come out to date are like amazingly expensive. You have to play wingback for Bayern Munich or something to afford one. Why are you in this? And if you are building professional displays, what has to happen for them to get down to a point where they're competitive with the product that's already out there?
Yeah, no, that's a great cost. So I'm going to pick on Samsung, which I know is a shocker, but you take a product like the Samsung Wall.
There's a first for everything.
First time, exactly. You take a product like Samsung Wall as a product, that's just Samsung slapping their name on a product being built by others in Vietnam. The micro LED industry is not about building that large format TV for your home, because that's a negative margin product. The Chinese have absolutely overrun that marketplace with capacity. Micro LED will be about building special displays or unique use cases. In the micro LED stuff that you see today, one, it's a misnomer. Those early mini LEDs, they're not micro. They're 10 or 20 times larger than micro LED. So they're just trying to wrap themselves in that name. But those are not scalable products because they're not built in enough volume. Other than Dave Haynes, not many people can afford that 110-inch screen on your wall.
This is true.
So the use case always comes to how do you get that into a commercialized market? If you take automotive, automotive in the US is about 17 million units a year. When you get to things like smartphone or smartwatch, you're getting into 50, 60, 100 million unit volumes. MicroLED has to connect with those markets that are at enough volume to then help drive the price down. And you have to be able to do that organically where you're building the full stack in-house as opposed to just acting as an integrator, buying products from 10 companies and putting them together.
So when do you see, I mean, you McDonald's and some QSR chains are your main customers. Do you see in 2-3 years that they will replace LCD screens with micro LED, or will it take 5 to 10 years until we're there in smaller sizes?
You're probably 3 years because you look at things like outdoor displays industry-wide that are having problems with browning, that are having problems with traditional TFT LCD not performing well. Those will be some of the first markets in large format display. Micro LED is a solid state emitter, doesn't care about the heat problems that you're seeing in the Samsung and LG products and TFT LCD.
Okay. You said, you will manufacture everything in the US, but don't you need to buy the components from China too, or will you be fully independent from China?
Fully autonomous. The push that's happening industry-wide and not just from a display, but also in the chip environment, you're seeing a decoupling of US and Chinese supply chains for a very, very good reason. And that's only accelerating more and more. And I think will continue to grow. I've seen recently we were offered the opportunity to buy 2 fabs in the UK, which the UK government seized because they were bought by Chinese under false pretense. Like the Western world is starting to really get much smarter about the strategic game that we're in today.
And you always tell me that micro LED is disrupting the industry because the fabs cost only 1/10 of an LCD fab. And your vision is a little bit that not only you, but also some of your competitors, maybe some of them who are sitting in the room, will start, building micro LED plants or mini LED plants closer to the customers. So in Europe and in North America and Canada and Mexico. So is that still your vision? Is that still you believe where the market is heading?
Absolutely. And I don't know that it'll be our competitors per se, because most of our competitors don't have 2 nickels to rub together, but they're strategic companies. So take a company like Bosch in Germany. Bosch is a very, very key infrastructure company in automotive. For Bosch, who builds semiconductors today, to be able to build micro LED based displays for automotive, for appliance, for medical, that makes perfect sense. And then you could have a full stack solution that's made within Germany. You don't have a dependence on a foreign country. I think that's going to be increasingly the case as globalization is now decoupling. So that 30 years that we spent on putting everything in China, we kind of now figured out, oops, that doesn't really work right or work as well as we had hoped, especially in a pandemic or in a bad political situation. So now you're seeing countries start to say, pull these industries back.
I have to ask about Samsung and VXT. Its own software suite that's going to replace Magic Info. You have for many, many years warned people about working with Samsung and what was going to happen, and it seems to be kind of playing out that way. So what's your response to all that?
Samsung now is probably for the first time in 15 years on the retreat. I cannot beat the Koreans. As an industry, we can't beat the Koreans, but the Chinese are going to smash them, and they're doing that right now. The onslaught of Chinese investment into this sector, the Koreans don't stand a chance because you're fighting the entire Chinese economy, and the Chinese have so overbuilt display. I was at the SID conference a couple of weeks ago in Los Angeles, and one of the analysts there said you have to take about 22% of capacity out of the marketplace just to get to break even. The Chinese have way overinvested in this sector, and that is just going to cut the Koreans off the legs.
A lot of talk about AI, particularly this year, and ChatGPT and everything associated with it. There's been computer vision and things like readers and so on working in drive-through and creating dynamic menu boards, dynamic pre-sale displays, all that sort of stuff. Can you describe what some of your, I know you can't necessarily talk about your actual clients, but I also know you're working with a lot of QSRs, what they're doing in that and what's going to come still?
Yeah, so I would say in our business between QSR, retail, any transactional customers, we serve lots of different industries there. AI is really interested on predictive analytics. If I know you, Dave Haynes, have come into this carryout 10 times over the last 3 months and what you bought, I can serve you better by targeting. For lack of a better analogy, it is that Minority Report moment where, based on prior history, I know how to serve you better or faster or more efficiently with a particular product or suggestion. So that predictive analytics, ChatGPT gets a lot of hype today, but there is true value in artificial intelligence in trying to profile that customer and understand more about what might be of interest to them or how to serve them better. That's the real evolution of the industry.
Chris, I think currently you have 5 or 6 different CMS platforms in your all specialized softwares, and Scala also. When you, at least from the outside, it seems like the Scala core, the architecture is a little bit dated. Do you plan to, start something like a new platform on a green field and then just, have different versions of it, or will there be one STRATACACHE software, one guy serve everything, or what is your strategy in regards to software?
Yeah, so we have 5 CMSs in the company today, with kind of the flagships being the Scala and the AMP products. There's more evolution that's coming to them this year and into 2024 with kind of big retools. So both in the Scala and the AMP platforms, big new releases. Those technologies, we want to be able to have them evolve as the customers drive them and as the dev team see how to make those better platforms. So there will not be the one ring to rule them all, but they will continue to evolve. And we have 300 developers in the company today. So the ability to put key dev capabilities into modules that any of the companies can use is beneficial, but they'll all grow and evolve at their own pace.
But just to better understand, will it be a greenfield approach? So you start with something brand new, which is Service Cloud based, or do you continue updating the current stack?
We'll continue to update the current stack, and because we run private cloud as well as public cloud, it depends on the marketplace. Everyone loves cloud until you're a bank or until you're a retailer. So there are markets that, because we work in very large enterprise, it's not uncommon for us to run networks that are 250 or 500,000 devices. Those types of systems never touch cloud in a public cloud environment because of the amount of security, because of the demands around them. So when you get into these really, really large enterprise networks, the idea of cloud hosted and multi-tenant sounds great, but it doesn't really work in these large enterprise spaces.
Chris, we talk frequently about M&A, what's to buy and everything. And 1.5 years ago, you told me, Florian, there's nothing to buy in Europe. Do you see the European market now a bit different? Do you see more opportunities either for Scala or your STRATACACHE companies on the client side, or do you also see some M&A activity where STRATACACHE could be active again this side of the Atlantic?
Yeah, so I'm working on 4 M&A deals in Europe right now, 2 of which are in Germany. M&A has opened back up, and you've also seen now some of the M&A that was done pre-pandemic, some of the roll-ups are now kind of sideways. So if you look at the trees and if you look at the Zeta, where that idea of, hey, we're going to put all these things together and it's going to be better, it hasn't really worked out that way. So you're seeing now, coming out of the pandemic, private equity and venture capital are constricted. So because the economy is a little bit sideways globally, you're not seeing new investments. So you're seeing a lot of interesting buy opportunities again.
Talk about valuation. Do you see already that we're at the lowest point now and valuation are going up again? Or do you think we can still, a few more months, valuation will still go down?
You've got another year or 18 months of valuation going down. Valuations always trail market conditions by at least a year. So I think you'll see another year to 18 months of decline.
So who are you buying? I mean, you can tell me, there's nobody else here.
Exactly. For us, the most interesting points are sensor companies, our ad tech companies, and our kind of boots on the ground integrators in particular market sectors where we have big customer base.
There is a crowded marketplace in Europe, really globally, for software companies. What has to happen? We've been in this industry for a long time and talked about consolidation, and it's kind of happened, but there's still so many companies out there, and the hang on.
Yeah, I think a lot of them hanging on. There's a great phrase from Warren Buffett, the American investor, that says, "You don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out." Well, economically now the tide is going out, and you're seeing a lot of bad naked that's happening in this marketplace. So you'll start to see compression of a number of well-known companies that are just not sustainable anymore, and you'll start to see them either be sold off or closed down in that software-only CMS environment because there's just not enough money to keep them going.
You mentioned sensors. Is that an area of technology that intrigues you because of the ability to kind of add to the solution stack you already have?
100%. So we did the Walkbase acquisition back in 2018, the Fins, that got into wireless radio technology very heavily. You have to have points of differentiation. Just the ability to say, hey, I can put a message on a screen in front of a person isn't enough, and really hasn't been for the last 10 years. It's how do I get more intelligent about that message, know more about that consumer. So if I'm looking at what do the next 3 to 5 years of digital signage look like, it's very much about sensors and intelligence at that endpoint as the key to driving differentiation in the marketplace.
You've invested in factories all the way to like drive-through displays in Dayton, Ohio, and prior to that you had your transparent LCDs. Have those investments worked out, or have they kind of run their course?
Transparent, not so much, but I think we learned a lot that we're then using in the micro LED space. And outdoor manufacturing for digital displays for drive-through, yeah, that market is a huge market for us. It's probably 100 million in revenue a year plus, and we started that 4 years ago, basically at zero.
You also invested into network operating centers and big call centers. Do you believe that the industry is still lacking enough engagement in that regard? That networks are still run and nobody really cares about it until something fails?
Oh, 100%. Most of the bigger opportunities that we see are large customers who have networks that they have deployed or need to deploy, but there's nobody to run them. Digital signage is a great outsource business to be able to operate those networks, much the way that Lufthansa operates aircraft and flights. You're there to get a customer from point A to point B and to make that successful and safe, and that's very much what we do.
Cool, great. We have just a few minutes left. Any questions here? It's your only chance to talk with Chris now. Everyone is shy. No, they're not ever. No. Chris, thanks very much, and thank you for getting up that early and giving us some insights. It's very, very interesting, and we hope to see you again very soon here over in Europe. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for the opportunity.